guest today is Naomi Cao, a divorce coach and strategist. After starting her career as a pharmacist and later running an education business for kids, Naomi's own divorce journey inspired her to help others navigate separation with more clarity and confidence. She now supports clients with emotional guidance, practical strategies, and a roadmap for building stability and hope after divorce. All right, Naomi, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's super late where you are in Australia, so I appreciate you making the time for us to do this and talk a little bit more about your journey and how we can help other women and men that are potentially in the same position.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's 11 o'clock at night.
You're doing well. I would not be able to stay up that late. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And so, as we know, you are a divorce coach and strategist. So, talk to us a little bit about what that means.
I guess the best way to explain it for a lot of people is for every project, there is somebody managing, like whether it's a building construction site, there's a project manager who manages that. And in my situation, I'm a divorce management consultant in a way. So people come to me at different stages of their separation. So if they're thinking about separating, if they're in the midst of separating and going through family court, they can come and see me. And what happens is I sit down with them. I give them a bit of a roadmap of where they're heading. I'm not sure about the system in the US, but sometimes there's a lot of legal jargon mixed in with a lot of emotions, and it's almost a recipe for disaster. So I help set up a roadmap. I work with my clients on their strategies, on their particular case, and essentially holding their hand in the process.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really important what you mentioned. Yes, I think, I, again, not familiar with Australia either, but in the US, the court system can be really tricky to navigate, especially if you're doing it on your own. Like I know you and I did. I've kind of wavered back and forth between self-representation and then hiring a lawyer, kind of just depending on what the situation is. But
Yep.
if you're doing it on your own, it can be really intimidating and scary, especially with the other emotions that you're having to navigate. And the system isn't always set up to help you, right? Even though it's supposed to be,
Yes.
it unfortunately is not. And I'm sure you probably find this with a lot of your clients. What we think is important for our story to be heard isn't necessarily what's going to help our case, or it's not necessarily what we need to be talking about in court. So, having a person like you or myself to at least trauma dump all of that story onto, and then
Yep.
we can help pick out the pieces of, like, this is relevant, this sucks, but
This
it's
is
not
not.
relevant to the
That's right.
case, right?
And this is the thing, right? Because I had a client just message me the other day and she said, "Oh, he's always late at changeovers. Isn't there a penalty for that?" And I said, "No, not really.
Right.
Not in family court." And then I end up speaking to her and flipping the narrative and asking her if she was late consistently, what would she expect to be the penalty for her?
Mhm.
And when I actually asked her that question, she said, "Yes, you do have a point."
Right. Yeah, sometimes they just need a third party that's not emotionally involved in the situation to just change their mindset or reframe it in a way that makes sense. It doesn't always work, of course, because this is highly, emotionally charged things, and often children are involved, which makes it even more
Oh, it makes it more,
challenging.
yeah, and more complicated, yes. And in the meantime, you have to hold a um a front up for the kids and everything's okay, but deep down you're dying inside and you're crumbling inside. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So, I think another huge message for our clients is not to beat yourself up over being a human, right? If we have a bad day
totally.
where we have a bad reaction to something, okay, I reacted, I had a human reaction to something, and like, let's not let that derail all of the progress that we've made so far, and we can
And
just move
it's
on.
okay, like, yeah, perfectly. Yeah, it's you don't actually have to hide away from the feelings. You can be upset and you can be sad. And if the kids do see you cry, then I think it's important for us to label those feelings and say, "Yep, mummy was sad at that time, and I had a good cry, but it's okay now."
Yeah.
And it's not about
Yes.
involving the children in the conflict, but it's acknowledging that feeling that you're going through, and it is okay to cry, especially when you've got young kids and they need to understand that feelings are okay.
Yes, I have personal experience with this. I'm not a big crier myself, and usually I cry when I'm mad about something, right?
Yes.
And so, oh my gosh, it was probably like a year or two ago where I I was so mad at something I did to start crying, and at the time 7 or 8 year old he was like, "Oh my gosh, like, why are you crying?" Like, it was so shocking to him because he had never seen me cry. And I was like, "This is not okay that you've never seen me cry because this is normal, right?" And
That's
so,
right.
even though we want to act strong and put on this front that we've got it all taken care of, it is beneficial for them to also have us model these other emotions where it's like, I don't always have it figured out and I don't always feel okay, right?
Exactly right. Exactly right. I've actually learned to say to my kids, I'm angry right now, or I'm frustrated right now. I need to go into the other room and scream, and then I'll
Right.
come back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think that's so healthy for them to see. Now, how old are your children?
So my eldest is 20, and then I've got an 18-year-old, so two boys, and then my daughter is 12, 13, 13.
13. Okay, that's awesome. Those are some pretty big milestone ages, right? So
Yep.
I'm sure you have a lot going on. And how long have you been divorced from your partner for?
So my marriage ended quite suddenly back in 2017. So the kids were 12, 10, and 5 at the time. So it's a
Okay.
while ago. Yeah,
Yeah. Again, those are some pretty big ages where they're all handling it differently, I'm sure, which can also be challenging, right? Because
most
you have
definitely.
to, it's not a one size fits all for the children.
No, and yeah, like so my eldest was in grade 6 at the time, and then I had grade 5, and then one just starting kindergarten. I think the biggest or the hardest thing for me was none of us saw it coming. Um, my husband at the time walked into the room when I was watching Survivor, of all shows.
How ironic, right?
I know, right? And basically said to me, I don't think we should stay married. And we were scheduled to go to see his mum. So he told me that on the Friday night, and we were scheduled to see his mum on the Sunday for a family vacation. And it was very hard.
Right.
So what followed after that was, um, I guess, a series of being blindsided one after another. And that was the hardest part because I'd been with him for 17 years. And when you thought you knew someone and all these things started happening, you start to question yourself and you almost lose faith in yourself
Mhm.
and think, I trusted so much. And I,
Right.
yeah, and I think that that was the biggest or the hardest thing that I had to face was, yeah, the blindsidedness. And I remember probably during the first 6 months, there was a lot of questions that I my mind just boggled and thinking, "How could he do this? How could he X, Y, Z?" What ended up happening with mine was he ended up locking me out of all the finances, and I had $2,000 in the bank account, and try and navigate around that.
Right. So let's talk about that a little bit because I do feel like this is something that's really common for women, especially. Unfortunately, a lot of us were raised with these gender stereotypical marriages where the husband usually was the breadwinner, kind of took care of the finances. We trusted them to make the good decisions and everything was okay. And then now, a lot of us, when the divorces happen, it's like all of a sudden, I don't know the accounts, I don't know my mortgage, I don't know anything, right? And I
I
don't
don't
have
know the
access
expenses.
to
Yeah,
anything.
it's a common problem. It's a common problem. For me, it was slightly different in the sense that I gave up my career to have the children.
Mm-hmm.
He is a specialist doctor and he was earning a lot of money, so that supported our lifestyle. We had three children in private school, living in Sydney, where we're one of the top cities in the world for expensive living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Yeah, and I knew where the money went. But even when you do know, or you think you know, things can change so quickly. And you're right. The different women in Australia that I support, um, they do have that same issue where they take on the care of the children and the focus is on the family, that you lose sight of the finances. And there is probably about 60 to 70% of women who I speak to who don't have any idea where the money comes in from, where it goes to, how much it is, how much life costs. They have a credit card that they have access to, but there's no real sense of budgeting or financial literacy. So when the marriages end quite suddenly, it's a scramble.
Right. So, what would you say to somebody who is kind of in the same position that you are in? Maybe they're blindsided by a divorce, or even if you know it's coming, they're fearful of the accounts being locked or the accounts have been locked. What would be step number one for them?
I think the first step would probably be having their own bank account to start off with
Mm-hmm.
and to start, yeah, or even women starting a relationship is to always have access to their own bank account.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do have children and they do take time out of work, that there is a set amount of money that they need to agree as part of their partnership, I guess, is that I need to put $100 a week or $200 a week into my account every single week. And that is part of, I guess, the contract. And the conversation that I do have with a lot of people that come to see me is that marriages is probably one of the easiest contracts to get into, but one of the hardest to unravel.
Yep.
If you're buying a business, you would be looking at the profit and loss statements. You will be doing your due diligence and looking at the finances, looking at the staff costs and all that stuff before you actually buy that business or even setting up a business and they do, look at business plans and so forth. And they sit down and plan for the next quarter or the next 6 months. But we don't do that in relationships. And there really should be a conversation more proactively focusing on that. There is just the assumption that whoever doesn't work does the housework and the other person works. But I think moving forward, we do need to change that conversation and it needs to be something that is addressed at the beginning.
Totally agree. And I don't know how it's viewed in Australia, but here in the US, if you mention like a prenuptial agreement, it's so offensive almost to people, right? And me being guilty of that, before I was in this world, it's like, oh, you don't trust me? Like, how dare you, right? But now it's like, it just makes so much more sense. And, once you're on the other side of it, where you do have to go through a divorce and you do lose trust in yourself and trust in your partner, it's scary to get into another relationship thinking, oh my gosh, am I willing to go through all of this again if something happens, right? And you do, it is, I mean, as sad as it is a business relationship, right?
It is, and it does get very complicated due to the emotions. In Australia, we don't actually have prenups, but we do have binding financial agreements, which are very similar, but it's not exactly the same. Um, but look, circumstances change, and I think it's important with I assume that it would be across in the United States as well, is that it's probably important to understand, well, how much did we both come into this relationship with? And if we're going to plan on moving in together, let's actually have a conversation about where the money comes from, how do we contribute? Even if you're living together without children, it's really important to address who's going to be doing the laundry, who's going to take out the rubbish, and share those non-financial tasks or contributing tasks evenly so that you don't end up resenting each other. I think we've got a lot of Facebook groups in Australia where the biggest concern is that women in their 40s start to sort of resent, I work, I do the housework, and I do everything, and the kids.
Right.
And I think what happens is you let it slide, and women just generally pick up more and more work. And I think you should be reviewing those terms and conditions, possibly every 6 months, every year at a minimum.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, more and more I have women clients coming to me, and, you talk about what was the factor, what was the final straw that kind of, nudged you in this direction. And more I'm hearing the unequal division of labor. They're sick of having, another child essentially to take care of. And it's a real problem. And especially, it's one thing if you're a stay-at-home mom, it's still hard, but even if you're, a full-time working mom and full-time homemaker, basically, right?
Yes.
And
Mm,
dad or whoever is over there not really having to worry about it or carry that mental load. And so women are just kind of like, well, I'm already doing it by myself. I might as well do it by myself without an extra
that's
person to
right.
take care
They're so burnt out, right?
of.
So, yeah, I think what has actually happened is that by us encouraging so women to go into the workforce and achieve and do all that stuff, we really haven't lessened the load for us to do all the other stuff at home. I think on the flip side, I've got two adult sons, and my thing has always been, well, we do actually need to help our boys or our men um, be more aware of all those other hidden things that get done.
Right.
So I think for me, it's about educating my boys. When they were 13, 14, they started doing their own laundry. They have their own expenses. They pay for their own expenses. They clean the bathroom. There's a roster on who cleans the bathroom, the commune bathroom, and then who does the lawns. What else do? They have to cook one meal a week. So it's just making sure that they know that they've got responsibilities that they need to do.
Right. Exactly. No, that's such a true statement. Okay, so step one would be having your own bank account and depositing whatever you can or whatever the agreement is, like weekly, monthly, whatever. So you have your little emergency fund safety net in case something happens. And then what other advice do you have for women or men that are having to kind of start over again and don't really have too many resources?
Oh, that's a bit of a tricky one. I think what you need to look at is in the short term, what is your 5-year plan? And um, yeah, very much like a business as well. What do I want to achieve in the next 5 years? Is it getting a stable home from renting into buying? Is it more holidays? I do find that more people in Australia anyway, by the time they go through their first marriage or they come out of a long-term relationship, they start to find themselves a little bit more.
Mhm.
And whether they pick up a hobby or they decide to go on more treks overseas, those type of goals change a little bit. It becomes less materialistic, but more about experiences.
Mhm.
And it's about, I guess, embracing life a little bit more. So really choose the things that you enjoy and and have it fills your cup.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people who are going through a divorce, this might be the first time that they've ever had that time to really get to know themselves, or explore interests. You know, a lot of us go from our parents' house to maybe college and then to our husband's house, and there's really no discovery time of who am I and what do I like to do, you know, especially if we have kids, and that's a whole other, you know, thing
Yeah,
that just takes over our life. And so I know when we were talking today, we were talking about resiliency, and a lot of times you don't really know what you're made of until you're forced to only rely on yourself, right?
totally,
And it's
totally.
like, I can do it.
And you're absolutely right, because for 17 years, so I became a pharmacist in my early 20s. For 17 years, I was somebody's wife. And then for 12 years, I was a mum. And then when it all ended, there was this whole fear. And I looked at myself and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got time to myself. What do I do?
Right. It's scary. We
It
we
is very
always
scary.
crave it as moms. We crave that alone time. And then when we get it, we're just like, I don't even know what to do.
And that is a conversation that I have with a lot of mums who have young children going through separation. And the conversation is, or I guess the aim when you do get married is you never intend to get married, have children, to have them part-time. But
Right.
when it does happen, their biggest fear is letting go of the kids because they don't get to see what happens at the other house. And so they do get very emotional about that part. And we do address that issue quite a fair bit because, like you said, we crave that rest. We crave that time. And part of my split happens framework, the first step is self-care and taking time out and being able to exercise for yourself. Really make conscious efforts to do things for yourself, whether it be spending 5 minutes every single morning doing your makeup. It's not about the makeup, but it's actually giving yourself that permission, that 5, 10 minutes. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm looking after myself. And I think that that's, something we all have to do when we forget that.
Oh, yes. And I talk about this a lot, you know, with clients. It's like they come to you, you can tell they're so overwhelmed, they're so emotional, they are hanging on by a thread. And one of my first questions is, well, how have you been taking care of yourself? What, you know, and I think self-care gets such a bad rap these days because you think of it as like a massage or a pedicure or some huge event that we're going and removing ourselves from the world for an hour, and it's not that. It doesn't have to be that. It can be the 5 minutes to go next door and scream and cry, right? Or it can be taking a walk around the block, or you know, doing your deep breathing exercises for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be this long drawn out thing or something that costs, you know, $100 or whatever the case may be. It's, you know, I can't regulate my kids' emotions if my nervous system is so depleted, right?
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
just reminding them, and sometimes they get a little spicy with me of, you know, it's like, Shauna, how can you? I don't have time to take care of myself. It's like, okay, but that's why you're feeling so, that's part
overwhelmed.
of the reason you're feeling so overwhelmed is because you're not taking the 5 minute break to just breathe and do that self-talk or whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you need in the moment, you're not doing that. So we just need to remind ourselves it's okay to take a 5-minute timeout and
Yep,
recalibrate.
most definitely. Taking that time out. And that was the thing that I actually learned was my first step um, coming out of my relationship is that I looked around and I'm thinking, oh my God, I've been looking after my kid. I've been looking after the family. I've been running around like a crazy woman, dropping kids here, driving there, picking up dinner, and doing all those things. And I didn't actually even stop for 5 minutes and thought, what is it that I needed?
Hmm.
What did I, what does Naomi need? What does Naomi need right now? And
Yeah.
sometimes it is just about sitting down, reading a book, um, going out having a bath. And like you said, it doesn't have to be expensive. Sitting with the dog and playing with the dog and living in that moment without the craziness. And we don't get that break. And so I do encourage people um, to take that time out of when they don't have their children to really look after themselves. Meet up with a girlfriend for a walk or go down to the dog park and spend some time. It it's just that outside air, that being in the sunshine, being in the fresh air helps you reset as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so easy, especially in this day and age, to just kind of, doom scroll on your phone or just going from like one thing to the next. And sometimes I have to be like, okay, leave your phone inside, go sit on the deck and like stare at the sky for a few minutes. I mean, we don't really stop to just like look at the trees or, all of these things. And so yeah, it's something that has to be intentional for sure. And it's
Yep.
not something that we're used to doing.
No.
Um, so talk to me a little bit about Split Happens. That's
Yes,
your
that's my
brainchild, you
thing.
said.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's a framework that I take my clients through. And the first thing is S for self-care. So we look at things that they can actually do to look after themselves. What are they currently doing? What are some of the things that they can pick up on, they can try out? The next one is P for perspective. So joining communities, support groups who who've got people going through the similar situations. And what that does is it gives you a bit of an idea of the scale of issues that people have. It's so easy to be caught in ourselves and go, woe me. But when you actually go into these groups and support other people as well and listen, you actually see that there are people who are really worse off than us. And they can, there's sometimes there's drug, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, family violence, all those things. And so it gives you an opportunity to see, oh, hang on, while I'm could be complaining about not sending the children over to their dads because he's giving them chicken nuggets, there are actually bigger issues that other people can actually go through. But it gives you that you're not alone.
Mhm.
I think for so long, um, when people go through the divorce, there's still that whole stigma or that shame that people think it's a broken home, but it's really, we need to really look at it differently. And it's a change of circumstances, it's two homes. And yeah, so having that perspective and that you're not alone. L, I think I'm up to L. Oh, yep. Is letting go of the life that you once thought, that you once planned. It's not being together in that family unit. And I think the biggest lesson I had from my uncle was I said because my marriage ended so suddenly, I was telling my uncle and I said to him, I thought I did everything. I cooked, I cleaned, I worked, I looked after the children. I thought I did everything. And my uncle, he looked at me and he said, Naomi, you've got apples. You're offering green apples, red apples, but your husband just wanted oranges. And in that moment, it was just something so simple, but it was in that moment that I realized, oh, it had nothing to do with me. I wasn't the person, I just wasn't his person.
Right.
And that gave me, like, that helped me accept a lot of things. So letting go of what could have, should have been, and I for independence, and that's finding things that you gives you joy. Things that I ended up trying out was I ended up picking up capoeira, which is a Brazilian martial arts.
Cool.
And this is when I was 44. And it was a mixture of acrobatics, musical, spirituality. And at 44, I learned how to cartwheel.
Wow. That's awesome.
I never did a cart, and so I learned how to do a cartwheel at 44. And that's sort of like my little signature thing. I go and whenever I travel, I do a cartwheel and I take photos of cartwheel. I cartwheeled in New York Times Square.
Okay.
I cartwheeled in DC. I cartwheeled in Tokyo, and I just recently cartwheeled in Uluru as well, which is in the center of Australia.
I love
So,
that.
so that's, yeah, finding little things that give you joy, whether it be picking up crocheting, doing an art class, I don't know, like any activity that gives you joy.
Yeah. Never too
And
late.
then, yeah, and the last thing is T for thrive, and that's doing things that you're good at. Picking things. So I did a whole career flip from an educator and now I'm a divorce coach, and finding that things that I was good at, and that was actually coaching people, explaining to them, holding their hand through that process, and that's made, I guess, made me where I am today.
Yeah. I love that. And it's, you can reinvent yourself. It's okay, right? And I
Yeah,
think, we were talking about kids a lot this episode. That's also a great model for them that you don't have to stay stuck somewhere that's not fulfilling you. It's okay to go back to the drawing board and start something new, not knowing kind of where it's leading you.
yeah,
And turning your pain into purpose, right? I know that's kind of
but
like a cliche thing now, but it's so true. Where it's like when we were going through our divorce, I'm sure it was like, we've never been through it before. I have no idea how to do this, but you do it, and then now you're using it to help other people, and I think that's just so beautiful.
yeah, like I think the kids see me do a lot of things out of my comfort zone,
Hmm.
that they are using that as an example. Like, kids don't listen to what we say, but they really see what we do.
Yeah.
And by leading by example and just giving it a go, it's helping them with their resilience as well.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Now, are you able to coach people kind of all around, or are you strictly in helping people in Australia? What is your reach?
Yes, so at the moment I'm doing only clients are over in Australia, but I'm hoping to reach international, because I think the messages are still very much the same, even though the family law system is very different in countries and probably in states as well. Um, there is a universal language that we all have to go through, certain personal development, and that is, um, I guess, yeah, across the oceans.
Yeah. So if people were interested in contacting you and learning more about you and what you do, where would they find you?
So they'll be able to find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on my website. So my website address is www.naomi, so that's NaomiCao.com.
Excellent. And I will link everything in the episode summary. But it was so lovely talking to you today and just knowing that, there is hope, obviously, for those of us who are just starting this journey, feeling overwhelmed, feeling hopeless, just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yes, most definitely. And it has to start with one step.
That's right. That's right. The first step is the hardest.
It is always the hardest.
All right, Naomi. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you, Shauna.
All right, take care. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you're navigating the challenging journey of divorce and need personalized guidance, I'm here to help. As a dedicated divorce coach, I can support you through every step of the process, providing the tools and strategies you need to rebuild and thrive. Visit my website at shaunawardencoaching.com to book your appointment today. Remember, you don't have to go through this alone. Together, we can turn this difficult time into a new beginning. Until next time, take care and stay strong.